Wonderful. So I'm going to get started. Thank you all for coming to PDJ's 2022 post-election roundtable, Progressives at the Ballot Box. We have organizers from all over the state today, which we're very, very excited about. And thank you all for coming. We're just going to, we thought it would be a great opportunity post-election for all of us to come together. We were supporting candidates throughout the state. And talk about our experiences, talk about what we saw out there, and then hopefully find some common ground and find some ideas for how we're going to move forward and get even better next time. So first, I'd like to introduce Kate Delaney. She's the president of South Jersey Progressive Democrats, a grassroots regional organization focused on electoral work, issue organizing, and citizen education in the lower 8 counties. Kate is a member of the South Jersey Coalition for Good Government and writes for the citizen journalism site SJ Advance. She is a mom of 2 and lives in Collingswood in Camden County. I would also like to introduce Charlie Kratovil. Charlie is a 2009 Rutgers University graduate with a degree in journalism and media studies. For the past 18 years, he's lived in New Brunswick, where he has advocated for progressive policies and community empowerment. He went on to work for several nonprofit organizations post-graduation. He served on the board of directors of the Rutgers University Student Alumni Federal Credit Union, and started successful news outlets in New Brunswick, newbrunswicktoday.com, and thepattersonpress.com. Charlie was recently honored to be the keynote speaker at the 40th anniversary of his alma mater, the Rutgers School of Communications Information, and he is currently still the editor of New Brunswick Today, a position he has held since 2011. He's also still a community organizer and the only independent candidate for the mayor of New Brunswick. Thank you for coming, Charlie. We also have with us Anthony Diaz. Anthony is the oldest of 4 brothers. He's an avid Star Wars fan, as we all should be. And he has been organizing since his days in high school. He believes that people power can solve all of the interconnected struggles we face in society, that there's no problem that cannot be solved by organizing. Nice to see you again, Ann. We also have here with us Danielle Freier. Danielle was born and raised in Jersey City, a resident who has spent her career raising money for nonprofit programs addressing social justice issues such as housing, education, mass incarceration, and the environment. As a development director for an environmental justice intermediary, she currently works with the philanthropic National Green and grassroots sectors to shift more resources to environmental justice groups achieving results on the front lines of the climate and ecological crisis. Prior to this position, though, Danielle served as the Associate Director of Development for Circle for Justice Innovations, another grassroots grant organization and grant maker whose mission is to end the mass criminalization and incarceration of communities of color. Her experience and witness to the growing displacement and gentrification of her own community propelled her to make a deeper impact, and decided to run for city council to represent her hometown of Jersey City Heights neighborhood, where she earned 38% of the vote. Danielle stays engaged currently through the Nitty Gritty, a group of women in Jersey City area, resisting and persisting through education and action. Thank you for coming, Danielle. And finally, our last but certainly not least roundtable panelist is Brady Rivera. Brady is a progressive activist from Mercer County, New Jersey, serving both as the elections chair of Our Revolution Trenton Mercer and secretary of the newly formed Mercer County Democratic Progressive Caucus. Brady recently ran and won for Mercer County Democratic Committee in Hamilton 18 off the line. Love to see it. Along with a slate of progressive candidates and Our Revolution Trenton Mercer members countywide. Thank you all so much for coming today. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate this great variety of organizations being represented today on the panel, and we're really looking forward to picking your brains and getting some good information out there for other progressives across the state. Well, first, obviously, everybody on this panel was very involved in this past primary. And obviously the results in some cases were not what we wanted, but we were able to pick up victories throughout the state and in other cases. So I think what I'd love to start off with, we can just go around in the order in which I introduced you, is what do you think went well for progressives at the ballot box this past year? And what is maybe one thing you think we could have done a little bit better or differently, and something we're looking to improve upon for next time? Kate, we'll start with you.
Awesome, thank you, and thanks everyone for having me. I'm really excited to be joining you guys today. So I was active in the campaign in Camden County, running county commissioner candidates that bracketed with Mario DeSantis, who was running in CD1 against Donald Norcross. And we knew when we, began the campaign that it was an uphill fight. Donald Norcross had $2.6 million cash on hand. So we knew that we were not just the underdogs, but that we needed to really define what a win looked like for us. So we had a clear sense of what we wanted to get out of the campaign, which for us involved base building, doing a lot of canvassing and doing canvassing in communities that we had not really been talking to, and really trying out some of our messaging, but also listening to voters to see kind of what resonated and what maybe we were hearing from voters that we didn't expect to hear. I think probably everyone on this call can identify, those that are doing electoral work, just how hard it is to run as a progressive outside the party. If you're not chosen by the party to run, you are always hitting roadblocks, right? There's paperwork that needs to be filed and you don't know how to do that, right? There's things about bracketing, there's things about nominating petitions, right? So we've been active since 2017 in running in primaries every year. And we've been building up kind of, a compendium of information about how to run. And one of our goals is to share that out and to really give all of the information that, frankly, we've learned the hard way, right? By, paperwork that wasn't filed the way it was supposed to be filed, or, complications in terms of how to best utilize challengers in polling places. So really kind of technical details that you can only get by participating in elections. So we knew, even though we weren't going to win, that we were going to win a lot of information. We were going to win a lot of new context. So that was a really big success for us. In terms of things that did not go as well as we wanted, or challenges, one, consistent challenge for, I think, probably everyone, right, is the challenge of remaining a progressive Democrat, which sometimes feels like a contradiction in terms, right? So on one hand, the Democratic Party consistently blames us, right, for their shortfalls. It's the progressives, right, that keep pointing out our faults or pushing us. And then, I have many folks on the left who say, you continue to work for this party in this party system that doesn't value your work. Why are you still there? So I think that's a continued challenge that progressives need to, just stay in that space, as hard as it is, and offer each other a lot of solidarity. It's been concerning to me to see kind of statewide people that have previously identified or continue to identify as progressive really be part of a movement that feels like tacking to the center, and really getting in line very aggressively behind the governor. And I think it's really important, no matter who's in office, Republicans or Democrats, that progressives have a really essential role to play in asking these questions, that we're really the ones that want to knock doors and base build and push the party to the left. And, I often talk about as being kind of the conscience of the party. So I think that we need to continue to do that. And it's difficult. And sometimes, it felt this round lonelier, that there was more of those folks tacking to the center. So, South Jersey Progressive Dems is definitely staying the course. I'm definitely staying the course. And, again, glad to be here to hear all of, other thoughts on this. And I will pass to Charlie.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Yes, we can.
Great. So I want to start by thanking PDNJ and all the other panelists. It is an honor to be here, and I hope you'll forgive me. I'm on the campaign trail, so I am out and about, but I wanted to make sure I could be on this call and participate. Here in Middlesex County, we have, a real deeply entrenched political machine, to the point that, our county clerk was putting her thumb on the scale. The Board of Elections was gerrymandering And, we had the deck stacked against us. I think the big, sort of marquee race was in Piscataway, where there's a really strong movement for change called the Piscataway Progressive Democratic Organization. The leader is Stacy Berger, and she ran for her ward in the city council or township council election. I was involved in that, from the beginning, and it was a very eye-opening year for us. So, actually, my first campaign ever was trying to change the form of government here in New Brunswick. I'm in front of New Brunswick City Hall right now, actually. And back in 2009, we tried to switch to a ward-based system of government where each part of the city would have its own representative. And that's a thing that I'm still a big supporter of. Piscataway is fortunate to have that system where there are 4 wards and each has their own election for council. So Stacy was prepared to run, announced her run. She was a committee woman in Ward 2, but then she got rewarded, which is the local version of redistricting because of the recent census. Every 10 years, they do have to redraw the boundaries between the wards. And this is where the gerrymandering, began and took place. So we had, basically a rewarding commission is formed. That's we have 6 members of our Board of Elections plus the municipal clerk in the towns that have ward-based elections. And they went ahead and adopted a map that had been put forth by one of the commissioners. And that map, exacerbated the gerrymandering that already existed and really seemed to, target Stacy and make it so that Stacy would be separated from her base and her voters. And, we saw that impact the election where, it was much harder for her to prevail because she had to connect with all sorts of new people who might not have known her. And the people who did know her couldn't vote for her because they were in a different ward. So that's sort of, I guess one of the downsides of ward-based elections is every 10 years, they get to redraw the lines and it's political people who do it. So this man is Dan Frankel, and he's the longest serving member of the Board of Elections. And he proposed this map. The map was not shared with the public, and they voted it through in a meeting and then took public comments from people who didn't get to see the map after they had already voted. So it was sort of a cart before the horse, totally backwards system. Then we had the issue of bracketing where, Stacy's movement's really strong. So they ran 4 people in each of the wards in Piscataway, plus they had 2 county candidates so that they could get a better ballot position. And, those 2 county candidates were on the ballot. They filed the bracketing letter. They did everything right. But our county clerk decided, you know what? We don't have to even have a ballot drawing, and we're just going to give line A to the machine. And that thankfully was challenged because part of Stacy's movement are some really great election lawyers, the same ones who are fighting against the line and, bringing forth all these cases to give power to the people. And they actually took the county clerk to court, and the judge ordered the clerk to put them in the ballot drawing and ordered a ballot drawing to take place. And they won the ballot drawing and got line A because they sued. If they hadn't have done that, they would not have gotten the good ballot position. Unfortunately, Stacy fell just short. The final results have her down 23 votes to a newcomer who is running for the first time. And I think, some key takeaways are, one, it was shocking the extent that the machine went to defeat her. And, really egregious and anti-democratic, the tactics they used. Even after all my years here in New Brunswick, I was shocked at what they did. And another takeaway is she did better than she did last time she ran. So despite all this, what she's doing is working, and she got closer. She got, closer than anybody else to beating the machine here in Middlesex County. And, I'm convinced that if she runs again, she will win. And so I hope that she continues to build in Piscataway. And I guess like the last takeaway is that it's important to be doing this work outside of the elections. The reason, Stacy was successful or nearly, successful in winning was that people know her name, people know her from her work, going to council meetings, organizing against the warehouse developments there, and just, helping people with their problems, really, which is really what the elected officials should be doing. But more people in Piscataway every day are going to Stacy for help because they trust her and know her. And so when I was handing out flyers on election day, it was real easy because a lot of people said, oh, Stacy, I know her, I'm with her already. So she, I think it's really important that we don't just show up when there's elections, but that we do this work, every year, all year round, and continue to build, because people will respect that, and eventually we will prevail and we will defeat these corrupt folks.
Hello, I'm not sure if I'm next. Maybe. Hello? Brady, I think you're muted. Can y'all hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry, y'all. I'm in the car and okay, I guess I'll go. Thank you again, PDNJ. Thank you so much. So I can speak to, Jersey City, Hudson County. I think what worked really well was getting real people to run. For me, entering this process, I didn't really have a real understanding of what the political process looked like. And so for me, I was learning with the community. So when I knocked on doors and when I was telling folks, I'm running because I want to represent my neighborhood and I want to fight for things that, are going wrong, but I don't have all the answers and I need your support. So I think people really felt a sense of camaraderie there, that we're learning together, that, I'm not a politician that is trying to, seek status or celebrity, that I'm just throwing my hat in the ring and we need everyone to work together. So I felt like there was a lot of new faces that ran in Jersey City and a lot of people saw that authenticity. So I think that really worked well in our favor. Things that didn't, I'm not quite sure. I would say, I think there needs to be a lot more fundraising that happens, a lot more education about where funding goes when it comes to funding a grassroots campaign, making sure people understand what is needed to win. As we saw in the past couple of days, you get texts, please donate $5 here, $5 there, and you're not really sure where it's going to. So I think you have to be really, really clear about how those dollars will translate to impact and success. So I think that is something that we really need to be clear about. And I apologize, I got my wisdom teeth taken out, so I'm a little bit lispy and swollen, but that's me. I can pass it on to Brady.
Okay, how about
Yeah,
now?
yeah, you have to speak closer to the mic, maybe.
I think it's a microphone error here. I don't know. I have 3 different microphone settings. Wait, I think it's working now. Is it
I
picking
can
up?
hear you now.
Ah, bless up.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can hear you now.
All right. I had the same problem with the last meeting I was in, so I don't know. My computer keeps defaulting to some other microphone. So I think we had a pretty good turnout what we did here in Mercer County this past primary. So one of the things that I think that is going very well for us here in Mercer is that I think that we're in a fairly unique position here in New Jersey, in that Mercer County isn't quite the North Jersey like machine, and we're not quite South Jersey like Norcross, blah blah blah. We're in between two of these like powers, the Democratic powers that really want to take control of the party. But I find that Mercer County is not really one or the other, but we're kind of like our own little fiefdom. There is definitely people here within the county who wants to maintain their power. There is some factions fighting for that power, but we're not North, but we're not South either, which I think proves the existence of a Central Jersey, but that's just me. But yeah, one of the things that we did largely here in Mercer County was we ran for county committee throughout the county in as many towns as possible. I think really the only places we didn't get to run any candidates was in Hopewell Township and Hopewell Borough, Pennington, and Hightstown. But after that, we at least had one candidate for every other town, and there's 12 of us here, 12 towns here in Mercer County. And largely one of the recruiting things that we did that went pretty well was, we did go ask around friends and family of ours who were also Bernie supporters back in 2016 and 2020. And ask them, hey, are you up for running for county committee? You only need like two people to sign your petition, depending on how big your district is. At maximum, I think there's only 2 other districts that only required 4 signatures for a petition. But I know for me, I needed 2 signatures. I got me, my 2 parents, and my brother to sign, so I was immediately on the ballot. And of course, if we had family and friends that couldn't run, we just asked them, hey, is there anybody else that that used to support Bernie? We kind of just did a lot of face-to-face contact like that. And I know what helped me out here in my district, which should always go for any campaign, is of course pay attention to your demographics, know their needs, know what you need to actually speak to them. And quite literally in my case, my little tiny district here in Hamilton 18, more than 50% of my district is Hispanic. Many with the same story as me and my family, where a lot of us started off in Trenton. We just moved to Hamilton not too long ago. Many of us don't know how to speak English. So I did run a bilingual campaign with my running mate, who right now is actually in a tie with one of the incumbents, but I think will come out on top at the end. I definitely got my seat. And really getting out the vote. I mean, knocking on doors, making our flyers, and just being more active than a lot of the incumbents, because a lot of the county committee members who currently have their positions in Mercer County are a lot of placeholders. So it's quite easy to get on top of a lot of those placeholders. And I think just one of the things that we probably could have done better, I guess, is just a little bit more planning ahead of time, and I guess just finding the right locations to put files on Google Docs, because sometimes some files got lost easy. And so, a lot of just like the administrative ends of things, just kind of keeping track is really, I think, what we could do better. But I think we did very well with the results that we had this time around.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Brady. And I don't think we could agree anymore. Last up, I think we have Anthony here with us, and we're just going over things we think went well for progressives at the ballot box in the past year, and maybe some things that we could do, maybe one thing we could do better or looking to do better or differently in the year to come.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for being late. My name is Anthony Diaz. I was the mayoral candidate for Newark, New Jersey. In this last election cycle, I dropped out or suspended my campaign after the race. I think one of the things is that the messaging at its natural is very, very good for people. I think that the way we execute it and the way that it's sometimes disseminated in the community, we can do a better job at. I noticed when I was knocking on doors how people didn't have hope. It didn't matter if you were a Democrat, Republican, or nothing. People know the system is fucking broken and they have no hope. So what are you using to cut through that? That's where I think there's a lot of disconnection. But those are my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we're talking about door knocking and talking about engaging with voters. What were some of the issues that were highest on voters' minds in the past cycle as you were going door to door? What were some issues that maybe even surprised you that they weren't? And I think let's ask Kate this one.
Sure. Yeah, so like I said, we were bracketing with Mario DeSantis, and his top issue was universal health care. And he was successful in getting Donald Norcross to sign on to Medicare for all. He probably only did it because he was scared because he had an election challenge, but that's fine. We're going to hold him accountable. So definitely that resonated with a lot of voters across demographics. For our county campaign, we sort of had carved out some issues we wanted to talk about. A lot of them were environmental justice issues. Camden County does some pretty aggressive greenwashing and presents themselves as doing important environmental work, which they're not doing. So we were excited to talk about that. There's also sort of like a 2-tiered environmental world in Camden County, where there's lots of like pedestrian and bike trails for suburbanites and lots of incinerators and heavy polluting facilities for people in the city. And it cuts across race and class lines. So those are issues we really wanted to talk about. We really found that when we started talking about county government, though, that as we suspect it might be the case, just a total disconnect. A lot of people are not familiar with what a county commissioner is. They are not aware that a county commissioner is the rebranded freeholder role. And in South Jersey, Norcross remains kind of shorthand for corruption. So we encountered a lot of people that just, felt like they were interested in talking about term limits. They just wanted new people in. They, wanted to know more about, so we talked about, the county government managing a $500 million budget. They wanted information about, how do they get involved there? I talked a lot about participatory budgeting, which is something I'm really interested in. And we're trying to direct people to get to meetings or to, lobby the county to take action. So it's kind of a heavy lift to get people to pay attention to a level of government that's definitely below eye level.
Mhm.
But, again, people are worried about corruption. I would agree with what Anthony just said about like people like feeling a lack of hope or a lack of engagement. So often people just told us they don't trust politicians. They're sick of insiders. They feel like everyone is a career politician. They didn't necessarily just mean Donald Norcross. They meant just the feeling that it's the same people in power and they really are distrustful. And that was, in various communities. So I think, just an appetite for change, concern about political corruption, and that idea that it's a very, closed circuit of people that are making all the decisions. And, as progressives, we know that is unfortunately the truth. And wanting to get new people in there. So, the issues, but also just not just, policies, but also procedural and practice and how power is kept and by whom.
Yeah, absolutely. Brady, I'm going to throw the same question over to you. What were some of the issues that you found on voters' minds while you were out there?
So one of the issues that came to our mind is when we were running our campaign was 2 things. One, a lot of our voters just never actually met a candidate ever in their life. I know a lot of people who, grown adults, they have their own kids, they have their family, they've been living in this neighborhood longer than I have been, I'm sure, and they've never had anybody knock on their door. So of course, one of the number one things that, needs to be fixed is just that voter engagement. And that's exactly what county committee is for. We're kind of like the smallest, most grassroots, the simplest seats that exist in our county and state party and municipal party even. We're that middleman between the voter and all elected officials because we are an internal party position. But the problem is people just don't know what county committee is. They don't know we exist. We are very small in terms of position. Yet countywide, at least in Mercer County, we have upwards of 470 county committee members to represent Democratic voters in each of our towns. Hamilton Township, for example, we are a town of 92,000 people. And let's just assume that half of that town, a little bit more than half, are Democrats. You divide up the districts into 64 districts, and each district has 2 people in it to represent their district. That is 128 committee members for Hamilton alone. We already make up a quarter of the county committee here in Mercer County. And yet, for some reason, voters don't know that 470 plus people exist to connect them to their elected officials. So there were many times where I had to do a little crash course as to what county committee is. Oh yeah, I'm a Democratic county committee member. I represent you to the town and county party. If you need any help with information on how to vote, any information on how to reach out to your elected officials, county, town, state, federal, otherwise, it's just that the Democratic Party has made little to no effort to educating the voters on like what all the positions are and what they're there for.
Mhm.
So that's one of the issues that we're trying to amend, but that was one of the biggest ones that that voters didn't know. In part, that does come to an advantage for us in that, you know, we're coming to them first before the Democratic Party does. So it does give progressives a hand up when, you know, we're knocking on doors and just letting them know like, hey, you know, I only represent 10 blocks here. So, you know, I'm not far away from you. I'm not this distant elected official who lives on the other side of town or anything. I'm quite literally in your neighborhood. Yeah, I could literally knock on some doors and I could tell them, hey, I live right here, and I was just pointing right at my door, just on the other side of the street. So that's one of the biggest things, just letting them know what positions exist, why they're there, and so you know we're getting the jump right now and getting to them on that and starting to fix that that problem that people didn't know that the county that county committee was a position that even existed.
Yeah. Now, Danielle, I'm going to throw a question over to you. Obviously, lack of information, one of the things we're seeing stem from that is very low voter turnout. In some places, we're seeing single digits. I mean, in the Newark Board of Education race, we saw locations that had almost 0 votes. So what do you think, obviously, some of the other causes of that are, but also how can we address it?
Yeah, thank you. You know, just kind of what everyone said in terms of increased voter education, increasing understanding of the process. Yeah, folks, just like Anthony mentioned, you know, I would knock on doors and they're like, you're just another one, you know, you're just another one. You're coming here during campaign season. And how are things going to change? How are you winning? Even if you do win, how is it going to change? So like, there's just this really morbid sense of, you know, hopelessness, you know, when you talk about this corrupt machine in Hudson County, New Jersey. And the big question is, how do you get people to engage more and believe in you? And I think one thing was just increasing access and, you know, being more inclusive regarding the political process. So for us in our campaign, it was really important to just do more education about what does it mean to even run? When you do run, what does it take? You have to get electronic signatures. You have to get people to sign a petition. What does that mean? Getting those translated into different languages when you can. And just being as inclusive as possible and showing that we're trying to make sure more people are participating so that we can have a real choice here. So for me, I think one of the big reasons people didn't come out to vote is because they don't see anything changing. You know, they really just don't see anything changing. They don't see how a person can, you know, dismantle a system. But I think the big reminder is to empower folks to, you know, understand that the community knows what it needs. And there's community work being done every single day. So how can you as a candidate be the messenger of that work and amplify that and shine the light that needs more resources? So I think they need to, you know, a candidate needs to work more in tandem with grassroots organizations, with frontline groups to show that, you know, the answer is there. We just need to amplify it. So
Charlie, I'm going to throw it over to you now. You're obviously out there right now, on the at this very moment at the campaign trail. What are some strategies? What are you looking at to try to help increase voter turnout and increase voter participation in New Brunswick?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't have to tell any of you how deeply flawed our two-party system is. I think a lot of people have lost faith in both of the major political parties. So when you go to them for a primary election, a lot of folks are just not interested in participating in party politics. So that's one reason that I'm running as an independent in the general election. With great respect to everybody who's fighting the fight in the primary election, I just know from experience speaking to voters, many of them don't affiliate with a party for that reason. And many people who do affiliate with a party don't understand what that means or how it works. I can't tell you how many doors I've knocked on for a progressive candidate and the person says, oh, don't worry, I'm voting for the Democrats. Yeah, that's the point of the primary. There's multiple Democrats. You have a choice, but so many people in the party system don't even understand the difference between a primary or a general election, or how this system works. And many others don't want to participate in it because they're turned off by the sort of national discussion. And so I think that's really the struggle is this two-party system that other countries don't have. And we're kind of like stuck in this bipolar system where you've got to be one or the other, and the right way to run is to run in the primary, and folks don't even understand how that works. So I think that same day voter registration is one thing that would make a big difference, because many people don't get registered in time to participate, especially for the lesser known elections like primaries, and also changing the rules about party affiliation and who can vote in what election. I think it's kind of silly that we have these rules that like, for instance, they just changed it so now unaffiliated voters are not going to get mail-in ballots mailed to them. For years they would get both ballots and get to pick which one they want. Now the new law is we're just not going to send it to unaffiliated voters. So that's like further culling down the list of people who are going to participate and making it even less likely that we'll see a big turnout in a primary election. So one reason I'm running in the general election is I want to represent all of New Brunswick, including those folks who are disaffected by both parties, including those folks who aren't here in the first week of June because they're Rutgers students or part of the Rutgers community. And I do think that, the way the laws are structured in New Jersey, it just stacks the deck in favor of the establishment in both parties. And they have a kind of partnership where they keep the status quo because it is more likely to keep them in power. And so I think we really have to dismantle that two-party system in order to be successful.
I think running as an independent or even in the primary as a progressive, you're coming in as the challenger, as the underdog, facing kind of a deeply rooted system. And Anthony, obviously we hear a lot about the line, and we obviously still have to do a lot more education about it. But what are some other challenges you found as a challenger coming in as kind of the underdog coming in and trying to make sure that there were some alternative perspectives being?
I think where I was in a good position to balance the work that I've done in the community versus, whatever is the status quo. I think also when I hear about the money in campaigns, I think that if people were to do bigger and better things with their campaign donations, it would change the way a lot of things work. I think that's the money in politics is very, very hard to go up against because it creates a lot of noise for people. And they don't know like fact from fiction, truth from reality, what is beneficial. People have been so manipulated that they don't know when they're being manipulated. And it sucks because, you're like a genuine person trying to do good in the world. And that's why you have that progressive platform. But I think the other thing that I heard a lot was about the voter education. And I think voter education just on the process is important, but also voter education just on we need to be doing different things. And a clear example of this is we do a lot of food donations with the Newark Water Coalition. This woman comes in and she goes, "Hey, you don't have any real food in there." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "There's only fruits and vegetables." And what I mean by using that example is that that's the typical person that may or may not vote. And if we don't realize how to build a connection with that person, you're never going to build a connection with the mass population enough to get the votes that you need to overturn the system or to fight against a corrupt line ballot. And I think that has reframed a lot of the ways I organize and the ways that I talk to people about campaigns.
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure. Obviously, there are a lot of challenges, but and we were able to get some victories. Brady, you were able to run successfully off the line. What were some strategies that you found really helpful and useful in campaign organizing in your campaign, as well as others that you were able to support?
Yeah, so I will say in my campaign, I did have somewhat of a pretty good advantage in that me and my running mate, we were both running off the line shore, which is a disadvantage, of course. We did run against a placeholder. So one of the two incumbents was quite literally the just inactive member of the party. They were elected to their position somehow, but we've never seen their face. We don't know who they are. They never ran a campaign either. And as far as I could tell, other members of the township party and the Mercer County party just they don't know who he is either. He never shows up to meetings. So that first guy was the easiest one to knock off. He got the least votes, 17 out of I think 88 or 89. And I came out with the most votes at 26, my running mate, and then our other opponent came both at a tie at 22. So we're seeing if we can get that one settled. But the other incumbent was also this older lady, really nice, really sweet. I met her, and she's good, but of course, we need some more progressive blood in the party, and most notably younger, because she was someone who was in her late 70s or early 80s. I don't quite remember. And she did have a walker. So, we were able to actually just, go around and knock on doors. And she was unable to do so. I hear she's very good at phone calls, but I don't know how often she was making those phone calls for herself. But such as the primary, we did go in not with bad blood against her or the other one, but we just went in with the motivation that we just need younger and more progressive blood. So we did win this election quite easily in our instance. In other parts of the county, we did have more active people, of course. So running against people who were active from off the line, we did have some of our members lose their elections. But for those of us that did win, such as the Mercer County, or excuse me, the Our Revolution Trenton Mercer chapter of Our Revolution, the co-chair Joe Marchica and his running mate, they were aggressively campaigning. They did aggressively knock on doors, despite some scale tipping that was going on. Some members of the party and elected officials did try to put their weight on the scale in favor of the incumbents, but the incumbents had come out losing. They try to send out mailers in favor of the incumbents over our co-chair Joe and his running mate Denise. But in the end, they aggressively campaigned. They knocked on doors. They made phone calls. And we did get the Our Revolution, our local chapter, to help out at that campaign, to knock on other doors where they couldn't, when they couldn't, and just a lot of a community organizing there. And fortunately, he also did pick a very good candidate for a running mate, because if I recall, she is also like the president of the PTA at one of the local schools here. So some of the parents in their neighborhood already knew who she was. So they said, "Oh, okay, we'll vote for you guys. We know who she is. She's great."
Yeah.
And then in other parts of the county, it's just about the same story. Aggressively knocking on doors, making those phone calls, and just getting to voters before the incumbents did, because many of the incumbents are just sitting there comfy. They take their position and votes for granted. So although they do knock on some doors and make some phone calls, they didn't do it as aggressively as many of the people that we did run their campaigns.
Voter contact is key, and there's nothing that can nothing that can overshadow actually being involved in your community beforehand. That's definitely what's helpful. Danielle, 38%, if I remember correctly, first time running, which is incredible. What were some things in the campaign in terms of reaching out to voters that worked for you, and maybe something that was surprising that you thought might work but actually wasn't what was helping you connect with voters best?
Yeah, thank you. For us, it was just increasing access and visibility, like I mentioned, and just being super real about the things that I knew and the things that I didn't know. So, I threw my hat in because I saw that the community was changing. I saw that our representatives were not representing us at all. And so just having real conversations with people and letting them know, like, listen, I'm going in there and I'm going to find out things, and like I need to go through this red tape, and like come with me on this journey, because I don't know what to expect and I don't know what they're going to throw at me. So I think people got really excited about that. They were very much, wow, she's going to unveil the mess, or and I want to be a part of that. So I think that was really helpful, just like getting people excited and saying, hey, I don't know what's going to come of this, but when I'm in there, you're in there too. And so people got very, very excited by that. I think as far as strategies that worked to get more voters to turn out, we were really strategic with our investments. So we made sure to use more YouTube ads. So we had YouTube ads. I think we did about five commercials on YouTube, and then we targeted it to the community. So I ran to represent Ward D in the Heights. And so all of those ads were just running every day in those areas. So people would tell me they would see the YouTube ads. I did them in English and Spanish, and a lot of people I was able to get more visibility through that. As far as things that didn't work, it's hard to say. I mean, trying to think. It was the visibility, it was more education, definitely telling people about the process. Fundraising early was very important too. And I think being honest about funding too, and like what fundraising for a grassroots campaign looked like. I was able to raise, I think, like $10,000 in the first 20 days of me announcing. And that took us so far. And one of the messages was how valuable it is to have resources to make impact. And so I think that's something that the drum that I kept beating, like there are grassroots efforts right now in the community that are doing the work, that are moving the needle, that are working towards a more just and equitable community. They don't have the resources. So this is why money matters here, because we want those solutions to be amplified and we want those to be scaled up. So I think that was really, really important. And yeah, what was the last part of your question?
It was just if there's something surprised you, maybe didn't work as well as you had thought, or you came in thinking maybe mailers was a key part of running a campaign, and then you thought it wasn't quite.
Yeah, we did mailers. We didn't do much mailers, but we did do the mailers. The phone banking was absolutely critical as well. So thanks to PDNJ and PDHC for helping there. I'm trying to think of strategies that didn't work. Yeah, I'm not quite sure if there was anything that completely didn't work. I think also it was interesting because when we would get invitations from kind of machine aligned events like debates, like forums, you think that would have a broader reach, but you don't. Like you really don't. Like I would attend a debate thinking that folks would be watching it, and they're not. They're frankly not. So you just got to keep talking to them and keep letting them know what you're about.
Very interesting. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that all of our panelists are leaders and organizers in their own rights and have their own organizations. And We've talked about voter education, canvassing, supporting candidates, fundraising and building out resources that our communities can use. And there's obviously a lot of work to be done. So all of you have your own perspectives and your own organizations that you're working with. What is an area or a part of your work that you think is a great opportunity for other organizations like the ones on this call and other organizations that we've worked with in the past can come together to really work together and support each other on? And I'll throw it to Kate first.
Sure, thanks. One area of concern for me is that I see kind of, at least on social media, all the conversation about why progressives aren't winning elections focuses on ballot design. And I will say now what I say all the time to my folks in South Jersey. So this is me airing it a little more widely. Certainly, we need to have a ballot that matches the rest of the country. There's no reason that Jersey should be behind. That said, I feel very strongly that at this point, if we are not having conversations that go beyond abolish the line and are not starting to figure out what else is, hamstringing progress, that we are not setting ourselves up to win. I think money is the biggest problem that we face. I saw this certainly in this primary election. I don't think that we are going to be able, generally, as progressives, to get funding in the state. So that means that we are a big funding, big endorsements. So it means we're going to have to look outside of Jersey for those. So I think talking about money in elections, really mapping it out for people. I've spent some time with my folks talking about how do you check on IRS, FEC, and JLEC, and really look at who's funding our elections. And thinking about, what does it cost to win? I ran last year in Collingswood, a town of 14,000, about 9,000 voters. I raised $30,000, and I knew, because people have told me, that George Norcross was committed to making sure that I lost, and the machine spent about $150,000 against me. And I had column one. Stacey Berger had column one this year. So this idea that if we abolish the line, somehow we will just magically win, it's not going to happen. We need to be looking really much deeper at what are the problems that we face. And again, money is a huge one. So, I think if we have a different ballot, I can imagine that people that can self-finance their elections might do fine. Folks that are maybe sort of, adjacent to the party and kind of, ask the party to do different things, but in a way that doesn't directly target any politician and are kind of, not offensive to the party, might be able to pick up seats, and that might be hailed as a great progressive victory. But I think for those of us on this call who have been actively, challenging the system, remain question askers, we need to think about, even with a different ballot, that, what else would it take? And I think part of that is thinking about money. And I know that progressives, we often are really amped about the ideas that we get to talk about with voters. We feel really strongly about our principles. And we don't want to get into the money, right? That we want to talk about, the causes we care about. But I think that we need to, and that if we can somehow come together to have these conversations, yes, the ballot line is a problem, but it's not the only one. And what will it take to really win? And that's just a piece of the puzzle. So I would love to work with anyone on this call, everyone on this call, about really having those conversations and, just informing voters. When I was running in Collingswood, and when we ran for county committee as well. So what's different about Camden County is that we run at large in every single town. So you can't just run in your district or your ward. You have to organize your entire town. There's 37 municipalities in Camden County. And the bigger towns like Cherry Hill are 65 seats. So you have to organize a team of 65 people to run together. And, they send out tons of mailers, 20, 25 mailers for a committee race. And people would say, why doesn't South Jersey Progressive Dem send out 25 mailers? People have no idea what a mailer costs. So I think having conversations about money in our elections, including our local elections, could be really impactful. And even though voters might be traumatized by that information, I think it's necessary. I think that we can do that work together, and it would help all of us.
Absolutely. That's Charlie. You're running a campaign right now, and you also have the pretty distinct perspective coming from your media background. What is an area you'd like to see, progressive and other progressive organizations come together on and support each other with?
Yeah, so two answers to this question. The first is an issue that I think can unite people across the political spectrum is protecting our air, water, and climate. If we lose that battle, nothing else matters. So I think that especially as more and more young people get the right to vote and begin, to decide where they are politically, if we position ourselves as the ones who actually are doing the real work to reverse the damage of environmental injustice and take the bold steps we need to prevent the worst aspects of climate change from becoming reality, I think more and more people are going to come to us as we see more frequent and extreme weather, as we see flooding force people to move and migrate. This issue is going to be a bigger and bigger piece of our politics. And I think, we all on this call probably agree on that issue, and we need to make it a centerpiece of every campaign we do. Two, we don't need reform, we need a revolution. Ranked choice voting is great. Same-day voter registration is great. Abolish the line is great. Each of those is chipping away at the iceberg of the two-party corrupt system that we have. We need constitutional conventions at the state and federal level. We need to get rid of the electoral college, which is a global joke that we still don't directly elect the top official for our country. And we have all these systems in place in New Jersey that are just like asinine and bizarre, where they say they're inherently fair because there's an equal number of Democrats and Republicans on the Board of Elections. So therefore, everything must be above board and totally independent. But meanwhile, the majority of people don't feel represented by either of the two parties. And we see things that are complete injustices. In Middlesex County, the county committee members for Middlesex County canceled the election. There was supposed to be an election in 2021. They preemptively canceled it, doubled the length of their terms, and said from now on, we're only going to have elections every 4 years because of COVID. And they got away with it. The first Latina in Milltown was elected to the Board of Education, and they tried to stop her from taking office and succeeded for a couple of months, prevented her from taking office. In Piscataway, Ralph Johnson, one of the candidates who recently ran for council, they kicked him off the Board of Ed for a few months because they said he missed 3 meetings in a row when that was not factually accurate. The movement there had to sue and take it to state court to get him his elected seat back. So people talk a lot about January 6th being, a coup, which it was. It was an attempted and failed coup. But there are lots of little coups that people get away with in New Jersey, in allegedly democratic places. And until we fundamentally reform the system and have a revolution that ensures democracy will prevail, we're going to be fighting an uphill battle. And so I think we need to push for those big changes as well as the little changes.
Absolutely, the corruption's too much to even list on a 1 hour panel. Anthony, I'm going to throw it over to you. Obviously, you're running the Newark Water Coalition, your nonprofit. Where would you like to see progressives and other organizations like yours come together and get behind an issue together?
All right, first of all, Charlie, I'm right with you. Burn it all down. I know you didn't say that, so I'm going to say it for you. Then I would say food. If you are considering running in any upcoming election, get involved with your mutual aid groups now. Food insecurity is going to be a massive, actually right now it's a massive problem with inflation. So if you're not interacting with your community on that level, then you don't deserve to take office. You don't deserve to serve. One of the things I talked about often, especially during COVID, was look at the organizations that are stepping up and look at the organizations that are being left behind, because that's going to be important going forward. So for me, it's doing that work now, getting involved in your community now, talking to the community members now, and being of service, so that when that call out to serve, which are elections, starts happening, people will automatically remember you. And that organic or that feeling or whatever frequency or whatever you want to call it, that energy that they'll give you upon seeing you, you can't pay for that. You can't pay for that.
Yeah, definitely starting off with where the impacts can be greatest, and making food insecurity is definitely top priority. Danielle, I'll throw it over to you now. Where would you like to see organizations like the ones on this call really come together and get behind the issue?
Yeah, I would have to echo Anthony. It's, really seeing how we can be in service to communities that are doing the work right now, to organizations that are doing the work right now. So, organizations can come together and be in alignment, but, they need support, they need more resources, they need more visibility. And I think we have a responsibility to lift that up. If you're considering running for office, or if you did already and you just want to stay engaged, they need more people power, visibility, and resources. So it's about working with them, working in service of them, asking what they need, what are the solutions they want to lift up, and truly being a messenger for them.
Absolutely. With that, I definitely invite you all to drop, if there are any community groups or organizations doing that work you want to highlight or shout out, definitely drop them in the chat, or email them to us at administrator@pofnj.com, and we'll make sure that that we'll highlight those groups as we send out a debrief, and a thank you, obviously, for everyone who attended, and to our membership. And Brady, we're gonna close it with you. We're gonna close it with you. And where would you like to see progressive organizations come together? Brady, I think you might be a little muffled. You might be a little muffled right now. I'm not hearing anything. You guys hear anything? No.
Okay, now.
Yes.
Okay. Couldn't hit said it better myself than how Charlie said it. I mean, a lot of the reforms are big and small. I know for me and our Revolution Trenton Mercer, a lot of the things that we're working on is focusing and preventing a lot of those small coups that happen at the very local level, township and county level. So with that, we work with a lot of local activist groups here in Mercer County, activist groups, and then union groups as well. We helped out with the union efforts here for our Starbucks. We had two Starbucks here in Mercer County unionizing. We had the one in Hamilton, and then we had the one in Hopewell. And they both did vote in favor of unionizing, and we did help, blast that out. So one of the things that we're personally focusing on here is, and we're hoping to get progressives more unionized here under the same efforts for unions. And we're going to keep it moving. Every time we hear that there's any chatter of like interests in creating a union, we want to be there and we want to help them out. We want to raise their voices and bring in other organizations to help bring attention to it. I know when it came to Hopewell, we were aggressively reaching out to a lot of our elected officials, state senators, state assembly people, county commissioners, et cetera, we were letting them know, like, hey, these workers, our workers, they want better wages, they want better working conditions, they want better hours, they want to live more comfortably, so they don't have to be thinking about, planning tomorrow in such a short notice, on such a rush with little to no resources. It's hard for people to get active politically when they're worried about, how they're going to pay their rent, if they even have enough money for the next car payment. So we are definitely focusing a lot on the union work around here, as well as trying to be watchdogs for anything that might be slipping past the elected officials here. I know right now, being part of Hamilton, we're going to be in Annie Kim's new district, and we're definitely on him about not supporting Medicare for all right now as well. We've been we've been meeting him and his staff a lot lately. We've been going to a lot of his town hall events he's been having around here in Mercer County, and we're really trying to get behind that issue as well. So unionizing in Medicare for all, and then of course reforming our elections is like the big things that we want to see progressives rally around here at the very, very local level. We need to be those watchdogs, and we need to really get on elected officials' asses and let them know, like, hey, people have issues and we need you guys to help us out.
Absolutely. And thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Obviously, one of our hopes and in bringing this panel together today, this pretty all-star panel, I have to say, is hopefully we'll start to increase that communication, increase that coordination. Not a lot of resources, as Kate mentioned before, here in Jersey, and in the progressive movement. So making sure everybody's on the same page and talking to each other is definitely top of mind. And for PD&J moving into the third quarter here, we're really looking on building up those relationships. So hopefully this is the first, the start of building that up with each of you. And you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention with Dobbs Jackson yesterday, that the day before, obviously igniting a fire in a lot of communities here in New Jersey and across the country. But we know it's not the end, and we know it's not the first, the first, you know, strike against our rights. So organizing is going to be more important, even more important now, more than ever before, moving forward, and making sure our voices get heard, whether it's in community groups, whether it is by voting. But we know those aren't the only ways, and hopefully we'll be able to come together and support all of those hoping to be heard. So I do want to thank you all of our panelists for joining us, and everyone else who's here listening and watching. We did our best to record this, so hopefully we're able to share it with you if I can figure out how that works. And thank you so much for giving us some of your time this Sunday, and we hope to hear from you all soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Great discussion.
Thank you.